Hello guys, hi, this is Ganesh Nayak. I help finance professionals and students to excel in their career and become a better version of themselves. And I also help students preparing for FRM and CFA exam to help them to clear the exam as soon as possible. Now, with this video, I know the FRM exam results are out, and just this video will help you to understand that how to analyze your result, how to understand where you have made mistakes. Okay, so that is the main purpose of this video. Let us start with the discussion. So for students who have not been able to clear the exam, okay, what they can do is they can look at their overall performance from the start of the journey till the exam date, and they can bifurcate their entire result into few buckets. And this is what I have done. So for example, one part is review the scorecard. What is the final quartiles that you have got? Okay, identify the weak areas, study material, look at what study materials we're using. Has that created a problem? And I will share few experiences that I've got while training people, trying to understand what is the overall structure or the process that people have and why they fail in the exam. Okay, so study method is also very, very important criteria because of which a lot of people are facing problem in clearing the exam. Time management is again one such area, and practice question is also one such area. But most important of all of this, I've found exam taking skill set. I'll be talking more about it where a student might have faced problem. And I've asked few questions which you as a candidate should also ask yourself to analyze your result. Let us move towards the first section, review the scorecard. Now, whenever you're looking at the scorecard, the result is given into quartiles for each book. Like for FRM level 1, you have four quartiles being given. For level 2, there are six quartiles. When you look at the quartiles, there will be certain books where you have not performed better. Like for example, you've got a fourth quartile or third quartile. So easy way to understand is ask yourself whether when you're preparing for the exam, whether that book was actually that much problematic or not. Then go into that book and do a detailed deep dive and bifurcate chapter by chapter. Just go through the book and see which chapter was easy for you, which chapter was actually tough for you. Make a list of your chapters. Okay. And within that chapter also identify which concept was problem, because this will help you to create a list of problem areas or weak areas in your entire curriculum. Okay, so bifurcate by book wise. Also, then ask very, very relevant questions for yourself. The first question that you should ask is that whether the questions that I got in the exam, okay, whether those questions were very tough for you and you were not able to solve. Okay, how many questions in the actual exam were very tough for you and you were not able to solve, and from which book, which chapter those questions were. Now I know it is right now it is not very easy for you to remember it, but if you have some vague idea also, that will help you. Okay, so whether the questions that came for me was it actually very tough, or the questions which were easy for me, the second question. So when I was preparing for the exam, I found this chapter to be very easy, but in the exam, I found difficult question from that chapter, and hence I was not able to solve. So this kind of analysis can give you a detailed deep dive into what went wrong. Okay, I'm just repeating the two questions. The first question said the situation where in the preparation itself you identified that the chapter was difficult and you got the same question in the exam. So you are aware about it. But the second question highlights that the concept was easy. You found it easy while preparing, while solving the question bank. But in the exam, they gave you a tricky question. Okay, so this is the first bucket that you should focus on. Review the scorecard, review the result that you've got. Look at the quartiles in detail and go back to the book, look at the chapter, look at the concept. The next bucket that I find is weakness. Now, this bucket, this concept is connected to your scorecard itself. Now, the way you have identified the list of chapter, okay, go for each chapter which you found to be tough. Go to each chapter and identify difficult concept. Write down the page number from the book. Suppose you are using treasure, then write down the page number, also the name of the concept of each book which you found to be difficult. Okay, so you should be able to do analysis of difficult chapters, difficult concept. Now, when you're doing this, also connect back to the exam day. and see whether you found some difficult question from a particular book or particular chapter. Okay, that also should come into picture. Next, you should also look at make a list of solve more questions on these topics or chapter. Now, why are you doing this analysis? Why are you doing this bifurcation? Because now when you're going to reappear for the exam, you will explicitly look at those concepts, those chapter in detail. You will try to solve as much question as possible from these chapters. That is what should be your motto now. That is how this analysis will help you. So focus on your weak areas of effectively in terms of going through the content and solving the question back. The next bucket, this was second bucket that we talked about. The next bucket is time management. Now I have identified that lot of people, okay, they gave the exam and they reached out to me also separately, few of my students, they were not able to manage time during the exam. Now this happens most of the time when you're preparing for the exam, you have not solved enough question bank, or else you have solved the question bank but you have not solved the question bank in a timed manner. Okay, so you can ask few questions to yourself, okay, with respect to this bucket, the third bucket. Okay, did you solve all the question bank, which means while preparing for the exam, did you solve the chapter wise questions or sectional test or mock papers in a time bound manner? This is very very important, because lot of students, they solve the question but they take around 4 5 minutes to solve, and when they go for the exam they realize they have not been able to do justice to the time, and they have not been able to complete the questions. Okay, so chapter wise question, whether I was able to solve properly in time bound manner. Okay, next, whether mock papers I've solved, how many mock papers, one two three, how many mock papers have you been able to solve in the time bound manner? Now there is no benchmark that every mock paper you have to solve in a time bound manner, but what happens is that when you do not have the habit of sitting for 4 hours and you have not solved any mock paper in that 4 hours time frame, then when you go to the exam you face challenge. You face challenge in focusing, you face challenge in sitting in that seat for that next 4 hours. That is why this question is very very important. Okay, next, also you should revisit your exam day and see on the actual day of the exam, out of say 100 question in 4 hour or 80 question for level 2, how many questions did you solve properly within that time frame? Because generally what happens is, on an average 5 to 10 questions, students, they just tick and come. So you can get your own analysis and understanding that what has been your performance during that exam day, whether you have been able to do justice with respect to that 100 question or 80 question that you've got. This is the question that you should be asking to yourself. Okay, during the exam, did you spend too much time in few questions? This is very very important. Now why this is so important? Because sometimes during the question paper they give you a slightly difficult question, they give you a slightly difficult question and they ask you, okay, they ask you the question in a very tricky manner, so you end up wasting 10 minutes 15 minutes in that, and ultimately you miss out on easy question. And this has been the trend. I've seen a lot of students for FRM level 1, the initial 5 to 10 question they get very tough, which breaks their morale, and also it disturbs the pattern in which they're solving. And the later 5 6 question also, which are easy, they end up making mistakes. So over here, do an analysis and go revisit the exam day and see whether you have been able to give good proper amount of 2 minutes for each question, or did you spend more time, more than 2 minutes 5 minutes on one particular section or question. So this was the third bucket, time management. The fourth bucket that we should look at, what was the study material that we were using. Now as a student, okay, what was my base book? Lot of students, they use Swagger, lot of them they use Garb book, lot of them also use Bionic Turtle. Okay, so the idea is that whether you were using only one base book, because I've seen people, I've seen students switching two books. They start with Swagger and then they somebody tells them that, okay, don't read Swagger, go through Garb book or go through BT book, and they change their book. So whether the base book that you were using, was it constant? Okay, whether you have been able to read the entire base book properly, that is very very important. Next, what was the question bank that you had solved? Now the problem is that a lot of students, they rely on GARP questions. They are very easy. They solve only the GARP sample paper. They don't solve chapter-wise questions. That is also problematic. Next, few of the students I've seen that they directly read Swedger and go and solve bionic turtle, which is very tough, and it breaks their morale. They feel they don't know anything. Okay, and a lot of people, they have been using some other material on Telegram channel, which are old materials, and because of which they have been facing challenges with respect to solving questions, and which creates problem in their result. So what was the material that you were using for solving the question bank? Next, were you using BT material? Now, why I have explicitly asked this question? Because there are few students who have gone through the Swedger book or gone through GAR book and they've solved binary turtle, and they've lost the morale. They have found the questions very tough, and because of which they face the prop challenge in the exam because they were not well prepared. They were not able to solve every question. They were not able to go through every material of that book itself because they found it very, very tough. So whether you face such kind of an issue, you should also look that in detail. Also, where you solving Swedger question, because Swedger questions are very easy. I do not recommend it to them, especially the chapter-wise question. You can still do the practice question, which is given in the at the end, the mock papers, 1 week, 2 weeks before the exam. That is still possible because they are slightly good questions, but not the chapter-wise questions. So this section, the fourth bucket that we are talking about, it is basically talking about which material were you using for preparing. If you tell me, if you ask me any related study material, Swedger is good enough for FRM level 1, level 2. Okay, you need good amount of question bank to solve the papers. Let us go to the next bucket, the fifth bucket, which focuses on study material, okay, or the study method. Now, a lot of students, they prepare on their own. Okay, a lot of students, they go to a coaching institute, they get the video lectures and all of that. Okay, the first question, whether I've seen the video of the chapter and I've solved the chapter wise question immediately, I generally do not recommend that. Okay, if you're watching the video of a particular chapter, watch it and take some gap and then solve the question, then revise and solve the question. Because if you're watching the video, very highly likely that you will be able to solve the questions because it is fresh in your mind. Then you're not testing your ability to remember the content on your own independently just by reading the book. Okay. Next, when you were preparing, did you focus more on only book three or book four, or say for level two, only on credit risk, only on liquidity risk? That is also problematic because most of the students, they fail in the exam because they neglect one book. For example, for level one, most of the students, they neglect the first book, which is Foundation of Risk Management. For level two, Operation Risk, they neglect. So has there been a case for you? You should ask this question. Okay, did you follow any particular order of preparation? Because that will also make a very big difference in your overall preparation approach. Because what is effectively going to happen? If you look at FRM level 1, the structure which is given in the books is not proper, or it's not highly effective. Because when I'm also preparing, I just follow my own order, and it helps you to streamline to connected chapters in a very fast manner. So, what was there any particular order that you were following while preparing? Did you break the order? Because a lot of my students also, even though I give them the order, they break it. So, if you're following a particular order, you have to ask yourself a question: did you break the order, or did you just skip or jump to a particular book? That could have also created a problem. Skipping certain chapters and not following any order, this is the same point. But skipping specific chapter means generally what GARB does, they try to cover each and every book, each and every chapter in some or the other way. Now, suppose in book two, you skipped out machine learning. That can be problematic. Okay. So, whether there were any chapter that you completely skipped and you didn't look at that chapter at all, I want you to go and analyze your behavior in terms of preparation for the exam. So you can look at that section also. Did you focus too much on calculation? Now, why this is so relevant? Because right now the pattern has been they're asking more theoretical questions for you. Now, and more theoretical means your understanding is checked. They're not testing your calculation ability that much. Even the formulas might be given in the exam question. So whether did you focus more on calculation, formulas, and then you realize, oh, theory questions were heavy in the exam, and that led to the failure. Ask this question to yourself. What was the approach of your preparation? Was it concept clearing or was it only solving of calculation based questions? Okay, so this is the fifth bucket that we have covered. Sixth one, okay, time management. Why this is so much important? Because during the solving, okay, of the actual exam paper, okay, basically this is a repeat. We have already talked about time management in a section, that how many questions have been completed, how many questions have been completed in manner of 4 hours, how many questions have you been able to complete in the actual exam. So we have covered this section. Yeah, the sixth bucket is this, the practice question. Now over here, what is happening before the actual exam? Okay, what was the status? Did you solve all the chapter wise questions? Why this is so important? Because it helps you to check your performance or your understanding for each chapter. Okay, if you just directly read the content and solve mock papers, you will not get a complete picture. Okay, you might be lucky in the exam, but this is not the ideal approach. So whether you have solved all the chapter wise question, this is the question that you should ask. Okay, when I was solving the question bank, did I analyze my mistake and did I note down my mistake so that I do not repeat those mistakes again? What was my learning from those chapter wise question solving? Did I solve the GARP sample paper also in detail? Did I do the analysis of sample paper? Because in the exam, what I've also seen is some of the questions from the sample papers are directly there. They just change the number and they ask similar kind of question. Have you been able to solve that sample paper properly? Have you been able to give time for your mock papers? A lot of students, they are so delayed in their preparation. They don't solve mock papers. I'm not saying they will not clear the exam, but this is not the ideal approach. They just solve chapter wise question, they just read and they just go for the exam. So ask yourself this question, whether this could have created a problem in your actual exam day because you've not solved the mock papers properly. Okay, so that is the sixth bucket that we have focused on. The seventh bucket, exam taking skill. This is very, very important because you have done your preparation for 6 months, 7 months, or for 1 year. But what happens is if you're not mentally prepared to take a competitive exam, then you will not be able to clear it. Okay, a lot of students, they panic during the exam. They find few difficult questions and they panic and they lose the focus. And because of which, the further questions which are easy for them, they end up making mistakes. I've seen this problem with lot of students. The major reason being they are not mentally prepared for the actual competitive exam. So this is what you should understand. Next, whether you have done proper flagging of question. Now, why this is important? Because if I'm solving a particular chapter question, out of 4 options, I've realized that 2 options are incorrect, 2 options might be the right. Whether I've taken a calculated guess, whether I've flagged that question, because I can come back to that question and redo that question. Because a lot of time in the pressure, you forget flagging and you just choose any option. So that can also create a problem in your exam day. Whether you have used option marking technique, this is the technique that I generally tell students, that suppose you look at the question, you identify that the answer is going to be between A and D. You're sure, but you're not sure which is the answer. Flag the question, choose any one between A and D. Write it down in your sheet, the question number and A comma D, because when you come back to revise the question, you know where exactly the answer will be. If you want to change the option, you know where it is. Okay, this is also important, whether you have followed any specific order or logic of solving the question. Which is basically what was your approach towards solving the question, because most of the questions in the exam would be based on your option elimination and based on your gut feeling that this is the concept that I've read and this should be your answer. That is what is going to happen in both level 1 and in level 2. Whether you have written down when you're solving the mock papers, when you're solving the actual exam also, whether you have written down that this question was tough, I will look at the end, marking, flagging, and also writing down, because that helps you to remember which questions out of those flagging. Suppose you have done 20 questions of flagging, and out of the 20 questions, you know 7 or 6 are very difficult. I have to do it at the end. You just noted down their question number. And the rest 13 you can solve first when you go for revising the question bank in the actual exam day. So whether you have identified that there were certain difficult questions which I have to only do at the end, or I have to just take and go out at the actual day of the exam. Now this is very, very important because this tests your ability or your pattern of solving the question. But a lot of students face challenge because they do not have the practice of going through the actual competitive exam. They cannot take the pressure of the actual exam. They panic and they tend to make a lot of mistakes in the actual exam because of this. Now, the next very basic question, people who could not clear in May, whether I should go for November or August. Now, my answer to this question would be, if you are a working professional and you have around 2 hours time, then you should only go for November. Don't look at August. If you're a college student and you have full day time, okay, then there is some chance that you can appear for August, because then you have full day and you can put in 5, 5, 6 hours and do the entire revision solving and go for the exam. That is possible. Okay. But if you're called working professional, you do not have time, go straight away to the November exam. Do not think about anything else. Okay. I hope this video has been helpful to all of you students who have not been able to clear the exam. And I'll be coming up with similar kind of videos to help you prepare properly for the upcoming exams. Okay. If you have any queries, put it on the comment section. We'll try to address it as soon as possible. If you want me to cover certain aspect of the exam, okay, like this, how to analyze, let me know in the comment section. We'll address it and we'll create a video for it. Okay. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you for watching the video.